I always believed anniversaries were sacred, a yearly reminder that something we built together still stood. 10 years, 10 whole years, with the same man, the same house, the same smiles plastered across family photos. And yet the truth unraveled not in a dramatic crash, but in the quiet buzz of a phone left carelessly on the bathroom counter. We had just finished dinner. He made reservations at that quaint little bistro downtown, the one with the candles and wine bottles, and an elderly man playing the saxophone at the corner. He was charming, attentive. He even ordered my favorite wine without asking. We laughed like lovers who hadn't aged a day. When we got home, he kissed my cheek and mumbled something about taking a quick shower before dessert. I was in the kitchen putting away leftovers when I heard the ping. One message, from a name I didn't recognize. The preview read, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Our baby kicked again." I didn't breathe. My hands, still sticky with chocolate from the cake we never touched, froze midair. For a second, I convinced myself it must be a wrong number, or maybe a work thing. But I knew better. Women always know. I clicked. Her name was Lila. Young, beautiful judging by the profile photo, and pregnant, very pregnant. The thread stretched back months, photos of them together, ultrasound images. Our little secret. The words burned. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I placed the phone back exactly where he left it. I wiped the countertop clean. I poured myself a glass of the wine he bought me, and I sat on the couch, legs crossed, like I hadn't just watched my entire life crack in half. When he returned wrapped in a towel and humming some Sinatra tune, I smiled. "Everything okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Perfect. Happy anniversary, darling." He leaned down, kissed me again, and told me he loved me. I sipped the wine slowly and whispered, "I know." But what I didn't say, what I didn't even dare to think too loudly yet, was that I wasn't going to leave. Not yet. No, I was going to stay. Smile. Watch. Collect every shard of betrayal and stack it into a weapon. Because if he thought he could build a second life behind my back, he had no idea what I could destroy in front of his. The first thing I did was memorize her face. Lila. There was something infuriatingly perfect about her, the kind of beauty that didn't need to try. Tousled golden hair, clear skin, the kind of soft pout that magazine covers drool over. And she wore it all with that casual, oblivious innocence that only the truly young can afford. I spent hours that night combing through every trace of her online life. Instagram, Facebook, old LinkedIn entries. I even found a poorly updated YouTube channel where she used to post makeup tutorials 5 years ago. Everything she put into the world became evidence. She worked at a boutique flower shop not far from my gym. That was my in. The next morning, I got up early, put on the black turtleneck and jeans he always said made me look like a New York artist, and drove to that store. I didn't have a plan, just a name and address and an overwhelming need to see the woman who had unraveled my life like a careless seamstress. She was there, arranging peonies, of course. She smiled at me like I was any other customer. "Hi there, looking for something special today?" I forced a smile. "Yes, I'm attending a baby shower." Her eyes lit up. "I love baby showers, boy or girl." "Boy," I lied. She nodded and began pulling soft blue and white flowers from different buckets. Her movements were gentle, practiced. I watched her closely. Every flick of her wrist, the way she hummed to herself while trimming stems. I wondered if she hummed around him. "Do you have children?" she asked as she wrapped the bouquet. I almost laughed. "One, a daughter." She smiled. "That's sweet. How old is she?" 6. "That's a great age. They're still innocent, but just starting to show their own personality." I nodded, my stomach twisting. She didn't know. Of course she didn't. Or maybe she did. I paid in cash. When she handed me the bouquet, our fingers touched. Hers were warm, soft, unscarred by years of lies. "Thank you," I said. "My pleasure. I hope the mom-to-be loves them." "I'm sure she will," I whispered and left. Back in the car, I placed the bouquet on the passenger seat and stared at it for a long time. Our baby kicked again. I should have felt hatred, but all I felt was cold, calculated clarity. This wasn't about her. It was about him, and I wasn't done yet. It would be unforgettable. The hardest part wasn't the lying. It was the pretending. Pretending I was okay. Pretending nothing had changed. Pretending to be the same woman who used to look at her husband with soft eyes and unwavering trust. That version of me died quietly the night I read Lila's message, but the world didn't need to know that. I still made breakfast every morning, packed our daughter's lunch, smiled at the neighbors, kissed my husband goodbye as he left for work off to the life he thought he was carefully hiding. And every day I kept collecting bank records, phone bills, travel receipts. He had gotten careless lately, like betrayal was a thrill he could no longer contain. Secret credit cards, cash withdrawals, hotel reservations under aliases. It was all there waiting to be documented. I created a folder on my computer, buried beneath layers of bland file names: Home Repairs 2019, tax drafts, recipe ideas. In it, I stored everything: screenshots, recordings, photos. It grew fatter every day, a digital archive of rot. He would kiss me, and I'd think, "You taste like a coward." He would whisper, "I love you," and I'd smile like I believed it. But inside, I was no longer a wife. I was an observer, a strategist. My therapist used to say I had a gift for emotional regulation. I called it survival. "Evelyn, you're so composed," my friends would say. "So graceful." Grace has a flavor. It's metallic. It tastes like blood you refuse to spit out. One afternoon, I attended a PTA meeting. It was my turn to coordinate the spring fundraiser, and the other moms chatted around me about crafts, raffle prizes, and cupcake themes. I nodded along, offered ideas, even volunteered my home for the next planning session. Meanwhile, my mind wandered. I imagined Lila in a delivery room. I imagined him holding her hand. I imagined him lying to me with that same mouth he'd used to name their child. And still I smiled. After the meeting, I drove home and cooked his favorite dinner: braised short ribs, mashed potatoes. The house smelled like comfort. He walked in, loosened his tie, kissed the top of my head. "Something smells amazing," he said. "I thought you deserved something special," I replied. He sat down, devoured the meal, praised my cooking. He looked at me with admiration, like I was still his haven, like I was still his. I poured him a glass of wine and sat across from him, watching. He didn't know he was dining with a woman who was already planning her exit. Not just any exit. A performance. When I would leave, it wouldn't be quiet. I found the prenup in the fireproof box we kept under the bed, right next to our marriage certificate and our daughter's birth records. How poetic. The document was crisp, untouched by time. Thick paper, formal font. The kind of cold legalese that pretends to protect both parties but always favors the one who asked for it. In our case, that was him. He had framed it as a precaution, a simple agreement, something his family insisted on. At 26, I had signed without a second thought. I was in love. Deeply, blindingly in love. And what was mine then? Student loans, and a dream of starting a small interior design firm. He, on the other hand, had inherited property shares in his father's company and a six-figure salary. I was marrying into security, and I never questioned what that cost me. Until now. I sat on the floor, scanning every clause, every line. There it was, an infidelity clause. Not a dramatic one, but a quiet stipulation: if proven, and only with sufficient evidence, I'd be entitled to a significant percentage of our combined assets. The language was buried under jargon, but it was there. A seed of power I hadn't realized I'd been watering. I smiled. He had written his own downfall. It wasn't just about the money. Not really. It was about the choice he made to protect himself from me, and now that protection would become my leverage. I photocopied the contract, scanned it to my hidden folder, and placed it back exactly how I found it. Over dinner that night, he told me he might be traveling soon. Just a short trip, he said. New York, maybe Boston. Meetings with a few investors. I nodded. "You've been working hard." He smiled, "Trying to build something for us, for our future." I nearly choked on my wine. Later that evening, I slipped into bed beside him, let him wrap an arm around me like old times. He fell asleep quickly. He always did. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the subtle rhythm of his breath. A man so sure of himself, so unaware that every move he made now was documented, indexed, timestamped. He had no idea he'd already lost. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to break things. All I had to do was wait. My mother used to say that men don't fall in love, they invest. She wasn't bitter, just precise. She had been married 3 times by the time I left for college. Each man wealthier than the last, each one leaving her with more than they'd intended. I hated how calculated it all seemed when I was younger. I believed in love. I believed in goodness. I believed that if you gave your heart fully, you'd be met with the same. But sitting at her kitchen table now a decade later, I saw things differently. "You look tired," she said, setting a cup of tea in front of me. "Chamomile, no honey, just how I used to drink it when I was anxious. I haven't been sleeping well." "Is it him?" I didn't answer. She stirred her tea slowly. You always wanted to be the exception, Evelyn. You thought you could love a man into being better. I looked down at my hands. I thought he loved me. She snorted. They always love you, darling, until they don't. We sat in silence for a while. The old grandfather clock ticked behind us. Her dog snored under the table. Then she leaned in. What did he do? I told her. Not all of it, but enough. The messages, the girl, the baby. Her face didn't change. You're not leaving him, she said flatly. Not yet. Good. I blinked. You think I should stay? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I think if you're going to burn it down, you don't walk away with a singed hem. You walk away with everything. She reached into her drawer and handed me a tiny flash drive. This has a contact, divorce lawyer, ruthless, works quietly, discreetly. You'll need her. I took it. You once told me you'd never be like me, she said. I'm not. No, she agreed. You're colder. That night I drove home with the flash drive in my coat pocket, my mother's voice echoing in my head like a prophecy I never asked for. She was right. I wasn't leaving. I was preparing. It started with his calendar. One afternoon, while he was at work and our daughter was at piano lessons, I logged into his shared email and scrolled through his Google Calendar. Meetings, client calls, charity dinners. But between the lines, I saw the patterns. Every Thursday afternoon, a mysterious board review that never matched any real appointment. Every second Saturday, a wellness day he claimed was for mental health. I cross-referenced locations, receipts, timestamps from his phone. They weren't business meetings. They were rendezvous. I didn't confront him. I adjusted. I began making phone calls, discreet ones. I found a private investigator through the lawyer my mother's contact recommended, a woman named Clara, who had once worked for corporate fraud cases before transitioning into marital intel. She was precise, quiet, and delightfully ruthless. Within a week, I had photographs. Him and Lila in a park. Him entering her apartment building. Him holding her swollen belly like it meant something. Clara even caught them once shopping for baby clothes, his hand on her lower back, eyes soft. It was all so performative. At home, he still played husband, kissed me before bed, complimented my cooking. He didn't notice I stopped laughing at his jokes. He didn't notice I stopped sleeping beside him most nights. But what he did notice eventually was the distance. You've seemed distracted, he said one night while we sat on the patio. I sipped my wine. Just work. And parenting. You know how it is. He nodded, but his eyes lingered too long, like he sensed something slipping. So I let it. I started showing up at his office unannounced under the guise of bringing him coffee or lunch, just often enough to make his receptionist nervous. Just enough to remind his staff that his wife existed. I donated generously at the charity where his company held board seats and made sure the press release spelled out Mrs. Evelyn Whitmore in bold. I hosted dinners. I wore red. I charmed his clients. Every time I made a move, I felt his walls tremble. This wasn't revenge, not yet. This was erosion. I was learning to dismantle the man from the inside out without ever raising my voice. And as his carefully curated world began to crack, he still couldn't see the woman holding the chisel was me. I chose a Tuesday. It felt harmless, ordinary, a day no one expects ruin to arrive. He came home late, smelling faintly of hotel soap. I was waiting at the kitchen island, a glass of scotch in my hand, his dinner untouched and cold on the table. He looked surprised. Hey, he said, setting his keys down. You're up late. So are you. He smiled too easily. I told you I had that dinner with investors. It ran long. I nodded. I know. He paused. What's wrong? I slid the envelope across the marble surface. Thick, heavy, full of photographs, printed emails, transcripts. He didn't open it. What's this? Evidence, I said calmly. He stared at me, blinking too fast. Evidence of what? I let the silence do the talking. After a long pause, he reached for the envelope, but I placed my hand on it. No need, I said. I know everything. Her name is Lila. She's due in 6 weeks. You met her at the summer gala 2 years ago. She thinks you're going to leave me. His face drained of color. Evelyn, don't insult me by pretending, not tonight. He sat down heavily, rubbing his temples. This isn't what you think. I laughed, a bitter sound that didn't feel like it belonged to me. Isn't it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what I think. He reached for my hand. I pulled it away. I'm not leaving you, he said. Oh, I know, I replied. You don't get to leave. He looked up, confused. I leaned in. You built this lie. You maintained it, nurtured it. You don't get to walk away now and play the victim. What do you want? Money, a divorce. Eventually, I said, but not yet. He narrowed his eyes. Then what? I stood slowly, collected my glass. I want you to sit in it, to feel what it's like to live in a house made of glass, to wonder when it will all shatter. I walked past him, paused at the hallway. You always said you loved the way I kept everything together. You're about to see what it looks like when I start taking things apart. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. He was already unraveling. There's a strange calm that follows a confrontation. Not peace, not closure, just a silence that stretches long enough to become dangerous. He moved through the days like a man walking across ice, careful, deliberate, constantly checking for cracks. He'd come home earlier, text more often, compliment things he hadn't noticed in years. He even suggested therapy. But I had no interest in repair. I wasn't the same woman who once believed love could survive betrayal. That version of me had been laid to rest beside every broken vow he buried beneath our wedding vows. Instead, I became something new, efficient, controlled, unshakable. I began waking earlier, working out again, updating my wardrobe not to impress him but to remember myself. I reconnected with old contacts in the design world. I went to gallery openings, charity events, and industry dinners, alone. And when I walked into a room, I made sure people saw me, not as his wife, but as Evelyn Whitmore. There was freedom in being watched by others while he watched from the sidelines, unsure of the woman slipping further out of his grasp. One evening, he stopped me in the hallway. You look different, he said. Do I? You're colder, distant. You made me that way. He looked wounded, like I'd struck him. Good. Later that night, I opened my laptop and drafted a timeline. Not for divorce, not yet, but for exposure. Strategic points, financial milestones, leverage moments. Because if I was going to walk away, I wanted the whole world to know who burned the house down and why. And if I ever doubted myself, all I had to do was remember the text message that started it all. Our baby kicked again. Let him kick. Let him scream. I had already learned how to live in the quiet. It happened on a Thursday. I was coming out of my Pilates class, sweat still clinging to the back of my neck, when I saw her waiting by my car. Lila. She looked smaller in person. Fragile. Her belly rounded under a pale pink sweater, her eyes red-rimmed and glassy. She clutched her phone like a lifeline, fingers trembling. Evelyn, she asked as if she wasn't sure. I didn't answer. I unlocked the car and opened the door, fully prepared to drive away without a word. Please, she said. I just need to talk. Her voice cracked. I hesitated. Not because I felt pity, but because I wanted to hear how much she knew. I closed the car door and leaned against it. Talk. Tears welled instantly in her eyes. He told me he was leaving you, that you didn't love him anymore, that you'd grown apart. I raised an eyebrow. And you believe that? She nodded, embarrassed. He said you were cold, controlling, that you had a separate life. I didn't laugh. I didn't speak. She continued, her voice faltering. But then he stopped answering. He missed appointments. I haven't seen him in over a week, and he's not returning my calls. So you found me. She nodded again. I didn't know what else to do. I thought you deserved to know. I crossed my arms. I've known for a long time. Her lips parted in shock. You're not the villain in this story, Lila, I said, but you're not the victim either. She looked down, ashamed. He made promises to both of us, I continued, and broke them with the same breath. She swallowed hard. What are you going to do? I met her eyes, everything he never saw coming. For a long moment, she just stood there. Then she took a small envelope from her purse and handed it to me. In case you need it. Proof, ultrasounds, his messages. He signed the birth certificate. I took it without thanks. She turned to leave, then paused. He lied to both of us, but you he underestimated. As she walked away, I opened the envelope. Inside there it was his name scrawled beside father in neat legal handwriting. And somehow in that moment I didn't feel rage. I felt clarity. Another piece of the puzzle. Another nail in his perfect little coffin. I slid into the driver's seat, set the envelope on the passenger side, and whispered to myself, let's begin. I met Clara in a corner booth of a dimly lit cafe, the kind of place where secrets felt safe. She wore black always, sleek hair, minimal words. She slid a folder across the table and stirred her espresso without looking at me. You have leverage, she said. A lot of it, but timing is everything. I opened the folder. Inside financial breakdowns, investment statements, even screenshots from encrypted messaging apps I hadn't known he used. Clara had eyes everywhere. How did you get this? I asked. You hired me, she replied simply. It was unsettling and empowering at the same time. His empire, so carefully built, had fault lines. Offshore accounts, side deals, tax avoidance, all hidden beneath polished board meetings and family vacation photos. "We file in 2 months," Clara continued. "We build the story. Sympathy for you, disgrace for him. It won't just be a divorce. It'll be a takedown." I nodded, feeling something heavy settle into my chest. Not fear, not even anger. Purpose. At home, I became colder. I knew it. He knew it. Our daughter noticed too, and I hated that. So I softened where it mattered with her. I braided her hair before school, read her extra bedtime stories, held her hand longer at the park. I would not let his betrayal rot the mother in me. But with him, I became ice. He started second-guessing everything, checking his phone like he expected it to explode, asking me random questions about my day, my plans, my tone. I gave him nothing. One night, he stood in the doorway of our bedroom and asked, "Are you planning to leave me?" I looked up from my book. Would it make a difference if I said yes? His silence answered for him. "You never really knew me," I said, closing the book, "but you're about to." He didn't sleep that night, I did. Deeply, dreamlessly. Because I had a plan, and I was winning. The day I told him I'd be filing for divorce, he didn't speak. He just stared at me across the table like if he waited long enough I'd change my mind. Like this was some kind of dramatic act I'd eventually walk back from. But I didn't flinch. "I'm not asking," I said. "I'm telling." I watched him shrink. Not physically, but in presence. In spirit. His bravado, his certainty, it all dissolved in that moment. And still he tried to summon the man he thought he was. "Evelyn, we can work through this. For our daughter, at least." I raised a hand. "No, don't bring her into this. You don't get to use her as a shield." He looked down at his hands, helpless. I wondered if he even remembered what strength felt like without deception to prop him up. I stood. "My attorney will be in touch. You'll have the chance to play fair. Don't waste it." And I left him there, in our kitchen, surrounded by the life we built together, a life I was no longer willing to keep patching. In the weeks that followed, I burned the remains of that life. Not literally, but piece by piece I dismantled it. I closed joint accounts, moved into a new space with our daughter, bought furniture that didn't hold ghosts, painted walls without asking anyone's opinion, hung art that reflected who I was becoming, not who I had been. I cried once, in the shower, 15 minutes of sobbing that came from somewhere primal. Then I turned off the water, stepped out, and never looked back. My mother came by one evening with wine and silence. We sat on my new balcony watching the sunset melt across the skyline. "You did it," she said. "Not yet," I replied. She smiled. "Close enough. You're not broken." "No," I said, "I'm rebuilt." That night, I watched my daughter sleep in her new room, peaceful, untouched by the storm her parents had brewed. And I made a promise. This new life would not be built on vengeance. It would be built on truth, on strength, on me. Sometimes people ask me if I miss him. And I always answer honestly. I miss who I thought he was. I miss the idea of us, but I don't miss the lie. Because when you've lived inside a cage painted like a castle, freedom doesn't feel like a loss. It feels like breath. Like air in your lungs you didn't know you were holding in for years. It's been 6 months. The divorce finalized quietly. He tried to negotiate, then to guilt, then to threaten. None of it worked. I had the documents, the proof. The voice I had long forgotten was mine. I've learned to be still, not out of fear, but out of power. I still wake early. I drink black coffee on my balcony. I walk my daughter to school and hold her hand a little tighter than before. I smile more, laugh easier, trust slower. And every now and then when I look in the mirror, I see her again, the woman I was before him, but stronger, sharper, softer too in the ways that matter. There is a fire inside me, quiet, controlled, unrelenting. The kind of fire that doesn't roar. It glows, and it never goes out.